All right, let's talk about managing blood sugar through what we eat. We're going to build a practical toolkit today. And look, this isn't about creating more anxiety or confusion. It's about breaking down some really simple science-backed strategies that give you more control, not just more rules. So, let's dive right in.
Does this question feel a little too real? I mean, for so many of us, the very idea of a glucose spike can turn a meal, something that should be enjoyable, into a total source of stress. But what if I told you we might be thinking about this whole thing completely wrong?
Okay, first things first. Let's bust a huge myth right now. That rise in your blood sugar after you eat, it's not a failure. It's a feature, not a bug. Seriously, research from unbiased science shows it means your body is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's breaking down food and getting that energy to your cells. It's all part of a very tightly controlled process.
So you might be wondering, what does normal even look like? Well, to put a number on it, for most people without diabetes, blood sugar will probably go up to around 140 milligrams per deciliter about 2 hours after eating. And you know what? That isn't some chaotic, out-of-control spike. It's a controlled release of fuel. Seeing that number shouldn't freak you out. It's actually a sign that your metabolism is healthy and doing its job.
Okay, let's open up that toolkit we talked about. Tool number 1 is all about the quality of our food. And this means we're going to move beyond the simple sugar is bad idea to a much smarter question. Just how fast does the carb in your food hit your bloodstream as sugar?
Now, to really get this, we need to wrap our heads around two terms: glycemic index, or GI, and glycemic load, or GL. Think of it like this. GI is all about the speed, how fast a food dumps sugar into your system. But GL, well, GL gives you the whole story. It looks at the speed and the actual amount of carbs you're eating to figure out the food's total punch. And this is where it gets really, really interesting. Harvard Health points to the perfect example: watermelon. Now, you'd think that's a no-go, right? It has a super high glycemic index of 80, which means its sugar is released fast. But, and this is the game changer, a normal serving has hardly any carbs. So its glycemic load is just 5. I mean, that's crazy low. The total impact is tiny. This just perfectly shows why looking at GI all by itself is a huge mistake.
So how do we naturally blunt that glycemic impact? What's the secret weapon? Well, it's fiber. Yep, good old fiber. A study in the Canadian Journal of Diabetes really highlights this. Viscous soluble fiber, that's the stuff in legumes, oats, apples. It literally acts like a brake pedal for your digestion. It slows everything down, delays that glucose absorption, and just gives you so much better control after you eat.
All right, let's grab our second tool. And this one is fascinating. It has absolutely nothing to do with what you're eating, but everything to do with when you eat it. Yeah, the actual order of your food can make a huge, huge difference. So check this out. A pilot study from Weill Cornell Medical College put this exact idea to the test. They had people with type 2 diabetes eat the exact same meal on 2 different days. The only variable? The order. So on one day, they had the carbs, bread and orange juice first. Then a week later, they flipped it. Protein and veggies first, saving those carbs for the very end. And the results? I mean, just look at this. They were absolutely stunning. When people ate the protein and veggies first, their blood sugar levels after the meal were way, way lower. And not just at one point, at every single checkpoint: 30 minutes, 60 minutes, and 120 minutes. But here's the number that just blows me away. 73%. The total glucose spike was reduced by 73%. Just let that sink in for a second. By doing nothing more than saving your carbs for last, you could have that kind of impact? It's the same food, just a different order. Incredible.
Okay, for our third tool, we're going to zoom out a bit. We're moving from a single meal to the big picture, your long-term eating patterns. Because, let's be real, the best diet in the world is useless if you can't actually stick with it, right?
So there was this really interesting study from Stanford Medicine that put 2 really popular approaches head-to-head, the super strict keto diet versus the more flexible Mediterranean diet. And what they found was that for blood sugar control and weight loss, they were pretty much tied. Both worked. But, and this is a big but, there were some key differences. That bad LDL cholesterol, it actually went up on keto, but down on the Mediterranean diet. And maybe most importantly, people found the Mediterranean way of eating just way easier to stick with over the long haul.
And the lead researcher, Dr. Christopher Gardner, really just hit the nail on the head with this quote.
The big takeaway here is that you don't have to go to these crazy extremes. You don't have to completely banish entire food groups like fruits, beans, and whole grains to get fantastic results.
Okay, so we've got our 3 tools, right? We're focusing on food quality, not just quantity. We're paying attention to the order we eat our food. And we're finding a pattern that we can actually live with. Now, let's talk about putting this whole toolkit into action in the real world.
You know, a big part of this is kind of like being a detective. The CDC reminds us that added sugar is a master of disguise. It hides in all these savory foods you'd never suspect. We're talking ketchup, jarred pasta sauce, salad dressings, even some breakfast cereals and nut butters. Just knowing where to look is half the battle.
And really, this brings us back to a super simple core idea. The absolute easiest way to dodge all those hidden sugars and get more of that good fiber is to just focus on whole, unprocessed foods. I mean, when your plate looks more like this, you are naturally putting all of these tools to work without even thinking about it.
And what about when you get hungry between meals? You don't have to reach for something complicated. Healthline has some awesome, simple ideas. Think a hard-boiled egg for a protein punch, some yogurt with berries for fiber, or just a handful of almonds for healthy fats. Super easy, super effective, and they'll actually keep you full.
So let's just end on this thought. What if managing blood sugar wasn't about fear? What if it wasn't about a long list of foods you can't eat? What if instead we focused on being strategic, on understanding the quality of our food, the order we eat it in, and finding a pattern that actually makes us feel good? We can literally turn that anxiety into empowerment. And that, right there, is a toolkit worth having.
All right, let's talk about managing blood sugar. We're going to cut through all that noise and find what really works.
You see it everywhere, right? This fear of glucose spikes. So what's the actual story here?
I mean, this kind of marketing just makes you scared of food. So let's look at the real science.
So first up, what even is blood sugar? Well, it's just glucose, your body's main fuel from what you eat.
And here's the thing you have to know. It's totally normal for your blood sugar to go up after you eat.
Yeah, a normal rise isn't some dreaded spike. That's completely different from the clinical challenges of diabetes.
Okay, so how do we make smarter choices? Well, Harvard Health has a couple of really useful tools for this.
The first one is the glycemic index, or GI. It just ranks food on how fast it raises your blood sugar.
But, GI isn't the whole picture. That's where glycemic load, or GL, comes in. It's way more practical. For instance, a bagel is high on both scales. An apple, on the other hand, is low on both. Now, what's really interesting is that simple strategies can make a huge difference in how your body responds. Check this out. A study from Weill Cornell asked a fascinating question. Does your food order actually matter? They had people with type 2 diabetes eat the exact same meal, but they just switched up the order. And wow, look at the results. Eating veggies and protein first, it made a huge difference. So what about bigger picture stuff, like entire diets? Let's put 2 popular ones head to head. Okay, so both helped with blood sugar, but the Mediterranean diet was easier to stick with and better for cholesterol. And this all points to one big idea, which is backed by experts like Diabetes Canada. Their whole thing is finding a pattern you can actually enjoy, focusing on whole foods and low GI carbs. And the impact is absolutely real. The right nutrition can lower A1C by 1 to 2%. That's huge. See, the best strategy is personal. It's the one you're actually going to stick with long term. You can even just start small. Think smart snacks, like hard-boiled eggs, a few almonds, or yogurt with berries. So look, the bottom line is this. Forget all those restrictive hacks. It's about a healthy, sustainable pattern. Ultimately, this is all about empowering you to make smart choices that'll last a lifetime.